Hi, this is Jennifer Kent with Parks Associates, and I'm joined today by Josh Locke, VP of Sales with Essence USA, to talk a little bit about his perspective on the connected health market today. Hi, Josh. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Jennifer. Great to be here. Thank you.
Awesome. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Essence and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Essence is kind of a sleeper company. Most people don't know who they are because, we're pure B2B. We're a custom manufacturer, so our brand really doesn't make it to the consumer. But we are a global leader in manufacturing of IoT products and platforms, even based out of Israel. We do all our manufacturing there, all our custom engineering for platforms and hardware. All of that is done in-house in Israel. We are the U.S. Division. The vice president there. I lead up the sales team for North America. So we even go into Canada and the Caribbean and even some of the South American countries as well. But again, Essence is a global leader in IoT. Basically, we what that means is we focus on hardware in the security as well as healthcare channels. And so there's a lot of convergence between healthcare and security type technology. Although the power is in the cloud, and we can kind of talk about that during my main session. But that's really who Essence is. We're as far as healthcare, we're in 27 countries. We're the only one manufacturer that's in that many countries globally. And here in the States, we're partnered with many of the top medical monitoring companies and service providers in the U.S. You go to our website, you see brands like Medical Guardian, Life Station. Some of the bigger guys, they utilize our product to ultimately fulfill their services.
Well, so thanks for that introduction. You really have a great position in the market to be able to give sort of a big picture view and the trends of what's been happening in the connected health space, also for devices that do ultimately make it to the consumer side. So, from your perspective, what industry and consumer trends have really shaped the last several years in the connected health space?
Well, that's a good question. There's a few factors, in my opinion. The largest factor is reimbursement. Everybody's really focused on that. Reimbursement is available to Medicare providers for connected health solutions, specifically remote patient monitoring of chronic illness. Secondly, and likely brought on by necessity during this pandemic, is consumer tech adoption, which you guys have done a lot of research on, which is amazing. And I read one that you were comparing 2019 and 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, and you have the actual numbers, so you can put them up on the screen, like maybe right there. But the two that really stood out to me was something like 30% of 65 and older used video conferencing services, and
Mhm.
30% used telehealth services. And then, ironically, today I just saw an email from you guys that you released some numbers stating 64% have used telehealth in 2021, which is extremely impactful. So these are all really great trends, and it clearly shows that seniors are embracing technology, which has been one of the biggest challenges, frankly, in the overall connected health industry. Again, the primary factor being the reimbursement. Now that that model's in place, we're having all kinds of conversations and launching pilots with our new Vital On product, which is a remote patient monitoring, very simplified, and it supports the Medicare providers that are billing to the five specific CPT codes that are reimbursable.
So I can definitely confirm that the data has only continued to increase, right, from the consumer side. That consumers are using connected health technologies more than ever, year after year, and even among seniors, that familiarity with connected health tech and telehealth services, the use of these devices continues to increase. You're absolutely right. So very impactful.
Mhm.
From your perspective, how has the role of technology really evolved to better meet the challenges of companies in this space?
Well, technology in general is getting easier, more powerful, and more reliable. In the not so distant past, complexity, connectivity, and reliability has been a challenge for connected health industry, at least in my opinion. Today, there are very simple and user-friendly approaches to connecting one's health, if you will. There's really two buckets in connected health. Health, one being kind of the reactive role in a quick response when a medical emergency occurs. The other in taking preventative measures, monitoring vitals and activities of daily living, as an example. So they've all evolved to be, easy, non-wearable tech or passive monitoring, as an example, more powerful. We need to connectivity, 4G LTE and the 5G networks provide more power, more coverage than we've ever seen before. And then the reliability is related to both connectivity and reliability of transmission of data, as well as the actual reliability of the connected health devices in the home. So they got to be simple. They got to work when you need them to work. Can't be fumbly. Can't be inaccurate. Can't be unreliable. And they've all become more reliable.
So, given that reimbursement is now in place and hopefully will become, long term and permanent, right? And maybe
Yeah.
expand. Now that you mentioned a couple of those great innovations and kind of changes in the technology, what does that next phase in connected health look like for you?
Right. Such a broad term, right? Connected health. What does the next phase mean? Yeah. But, I believe the next phase will be more innovative companies getting more attention and scale in the next few years. It's happening now. The more innovative ones, they have virtual assistants and stuff like that. They're going to gain, a lot of attention and market share. The companies with connected health in the connected health industry that are choosing not to innovate and offer more value to their stakeholders, ultimately end users and caregivers, I think they'll lose out on some of the opportunities out there. Um, to those same companies that are providing the latest and greatest solutions that are being more adopted today by the markets they're going after. And if you want me to kind of opine specifically, I believe a full connected health solution that a few companies I know of provide today will become more mature, in the market, and positioned to obtain massive scalability ultimately. In essence, as an IoT manufacturer and platform service provider and integrator into existing platforms, we'll be working with these companies to change the way that in-home healthcare is being addressed.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for that perspective. And honestly, when I think about Essence and where you sit in the fact that you do provide IoT devices and platforms to verticals that are not healthcare, that may be more advanced and
Yeah.
much further down the road than healthcare because they don't have the same type of barriers across the board that kind of healthcare does, especially the United States. Can you talk a little bit about how that positions somebody like an Essence to bring learning from these other verticals into the healthcare space?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's how we arrived in the healthcare space is from our experience in the security market, residential, commercial, smart home automation world that we've been in for over 25 years. Yeah, so it's similar technology, but it really revolves around kind of what you're doing on the back end and who you're partnered with. And it's revolved around the data that you're gathering from these devices. As an example, a passive infrared motion detector in the security world is what I consider kind of a dummy device. It does just what it states. It triggers on infrared and motion, right? But in the healthcare world, you want more data. You want to know, how long that motion was in that room, and even you want to be able to put in type radar technology. We've got a technology called MD Sense. That's what we call it. Other people rebrand it, of course, Jennifer. But MD Sense is using, not only the passive infrared motion, but also radar technology to tell the gait of a person. Are they standing? Are they seated? Are they lying on their couch? Or are they lying on the floor, which is indicative of a fall, unless you're doing yoga or something like that. But yeah, so it's an evolution over the years to answer your question, and our experience in the security world has really led to our innovation in the healthcare side. we're the number one manufacturer of security products in Europe and ranked number 3 globally. We do over 1 million pieces of equipment a month. So we have a lot of power when it comes to innovating and using our extremely talented engineers on the security side to make products that really apply to healthcare.
Well, it's certainly a exciting time to be in the connected health space, considered broadly. Certainly by necessity, this market has moved forward by leaps and bounds over the past 18 months. And there's so much innovation and opportunity ahead of us to really make a real difference in people's lives and in the system as a whole. So Josh, thank you so much for joining me today and sharing your insights and opinions, and look forward to continuing the conversation with Essence and all the industry leaders that participate as part of the connected health community with Parks Associates throughout the year.
Yes, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer, and Parks. Much appreciated for everything you guys do.
If you miss a live session, you can go back at any time to watch on demand. Go to Watch Replays and click on the session that you want to view. Have you created your own event agenda and swap card? Visit the Agenda and Watch Replay tabs to add sessions that interest you to your own event. You can go back to My Event to revisit any bookmarked sessions, sponsors, and items. We want to make sure that you're connecting with our industry-leading sponsors. You can interact with them by visiting the Booths and the Sponsor tab. You can also bookmark sponsors or add items to your event to view later. Sponsors have uploaded extra materials for attendees. Make sure to visit sponsors that interest you to chat with one of their team members or save documents for later. We have dedicated meeting slots set up for break times between sessions. Continue the discussion by requesting meetings from others in the Swap Card platform. Schedule a meeting with another attendee or a sponsor by visiting their page. The panelists and speakers will be addressing your questions live during the stream. During the stream, use the question tab to ask your questions early in the presentation. Go to the poll tab to answer polls that will be discussed during the live stream. If you need help navigating Swap Card, please reach out to our team by mentioning @Parks Associates in the chat box or by contacting one of our team members via our company page. Hello, we're excited to welcome you to Parks Associates' 8th Annual Connected Health Summit, being hosted virtually across 2021 with sessions featuring our esteemed analyst team sharing Parks Associates' latest consumer data and market insights. In its 8th year, Connected Health Summit is an executive conference focused on the impact of connected devices and IoT healthcare solutions on consumers at home. The past 18 months have had an unprecedented impact on healthcare worldwide. The COVID-19 outbreak and resulting public safety measures led to sharp decreases in in-person visits, the delay of many elective procedures, and dramatic changes in how healthcare is accessed by patients and delivered by providers. This year's event, Connected Health Summit, Consumer Engagement and Innovation, addresses opportunities for new solutions including smart home platforms, telehealth services, voice assistants, and wearables to empower consumers, caregivers, and providers with new insight into patient health. Providers must rise to meet the growing demand for services in independent living, chronic care management, remote access to care, and wellness and fitness. New business models, technologies, and solutions are providing a more consumer-centric experience. Telehealth and independent living solutions are extending healthcare and enabling healthcare delivery to a larger market with a specific impact to elderly, patients with chronic conditions, rural households, and caretakers. We look forward to sharing more of our research across the year and bringing you the industry leaders in the connected health industries. Thank you for joining us today for these sessions.
Hi, welcome back to day 2 of the Parks Associates Connected Health Summit. In today's session, we are exploring the role and opportunity for smart home platforms in the critical independent living market, an area that continues to be of tremendous interest to Parks Associates as we celebrate our 35th year. Before we proceed, I would like to take a moment and recognize the bravery and sacrifice of those fallen Americans who gave their lives over the last week during the Afghanistan withdrawal. Before we get started, I'd like to give a special thank you and shout out to our sponsors, Alarm.com, Essence, and Everrise for helping making this event possible, as well as our supporters CEDIA, Connected Design, DealerScope, SCTE, the Monitoring Association, Z-Wave Alliance, Broadband Communities Magazine, ESA, Health Tech Insider, and mHealth Times. If this is your first time joining us in 2021, welcome. If you were with us for our January, April, or June events, welcome back. In addition, please take note that we just announced our plans for Connection Summit at CES. For 15 years, we have partnered with CTA to bring connections to CTS, so please watch for announcements to get involved in that event. My name is Mark Vina, and I am the Senior Director of the Smart Home Research Practice at Parks Associates. I'll be providing my perspective of the market, and then we will hear today's visionary hearing presentation from Joshua Locke, Vice President of Essence USA. Following that, Elizabeth Parks, President of Parks Associates, will conduct an executive Q&A with Careband CEO Adam Sobel. Following that discussion, we will have an interactive panel to talk about how the smart home value proposition is impacting and disrupting healthcare in the independent living space. Let's spend a few minutes discussing some of the major trends Parks Associates believes that are having a major impact in the independent living space from a core smart home solutions perspective. To set the stage for today's presentations, I want to shine some light on some of the key trends that are creating tremendous opportunities for smart home technologies in the independent living space. First, the pandemic has cleared the path for acceptance of smart home optimized usage models in the independent living space. As I'll discuss in a few moments, the demographics of the greater than 50-year-old population has created a number of tailwinds for device manufacturers and solutions providers. In addition, the usage models that the wearables category addresses are proving to be an exciting and compelling opportunity. Touchless and home sensor solutions are gaining an attention and appeal. Moreover, Parks research data shows there is an explicit willingness to pay for independent living monitoring services, which is good news for those companies willing to capitalize on this market opportunity. Despite this positive outlook, much more work must be done to address perceived usefulness and usability obstacles, as well as convincing the skeptical element of the market of the smart home value proposition. No presentation about the independent living space would be complete without some brief commentary about the impact of COVID-19. Without question, the Delta variant has created a deja vu feeling with most Americans about when life will return to some sense of normalcy. And while the senior population is highly vaccinated compared to other age population groups in the United States, the Delta variant continues to cause uncertainty and stress with seniors, their family members, and even caregivers. This chart underscores the highly personal nature of COVID-19, indicating that over 70% of heads of U.S. households reporting that they know at least one person with the virus, many of them being relatives. Now, let's focus a bit on the four classes of smart technology solutions that have broad appeal in the independent living space. Personal emergency response systems, known as PERS, smart watches, professionally installed sensor systems, and smart speakers, smart displays. Parks Associates tested these solutions categories for family caregiver appeal, purchase likelihood, must-have features, willingness to pay for professional monitoring, and their preferred purchase channel. Turning our attention to both caregiver familiarity and purchase attention with independent living solutions, our consumer data indicates that personal emergency response system class products, smart speakers, smart displays, and smart watches all score greater than 50% in the familiarity area, with purchase attention scoring nearly equally in these categories. Even home sensor systems, which have privacy perception issues with some caregivers, scores nearly 50% from a familiarity and purchase intention standpoint. Largely popularized by the media attention that the recent models of the Apple Watch have generated with fall down detection and remote notification, it's not surprising to observe that a higher percentage of consumers report that after being properly educated on the capabilities of a wearable PERS device, they tend to choose a smartwatch as their preferred device. Not to be outdone, smart speakers, smart displays, in-home sensor solutions, and other non-smartwatch PERS solutions all have significant purchase consideration levels. When we dive deeper into the top must-have features for PERS class devices, panic button, the remote ability to detect or get notified of a fall down event, long battery life, and cellular connectivity figure prominently. When we look at the smartwatch category, we see a highly similar list of desired smartwatch features, including the ability for emergency services to be automatically dispatched if a loved one falls down. When we look at smart speakers and smart displays, it's important to recall that these products offer differentiated functionality compared to other products that Parks Associates tested. As the above chart indicates, the strength of these products are clearly associated with communications and convenience due to the usefulness of voice control, as well as the potential of automation benefits for seniors. Home sensors, on the other hand, are viewed more as potent safety features. These products stand out for their ability to detect falls in various rooms throughout the home without wearing a device, detection of fire, gas, land, and water leaks, and notifications if doors or the garage are left open. Clearly, consumers appreciate the value proposition of these solutions and are willing to pay for professional monitoring services. Of these consumers interested in these solutions, north of 80% across these product categories, they expressed a willingness to pay a $10 per month, and a meaningful percentage indicated they would pay upwards of $40 per month. At $40 per month, this represents a potential of $1.08 billion in incremental revenue if just 1 million customers, or 1% of the US broadband market, sign up for a professional monitoring plan. The channel element of the independent living solutions paradigm deserves some special attention as well. Our research shows that independent living specialty companies, product manufacturers, health insurers, and home security service providers all have the upper hand as a preferred channel across all these platforms, presumably due to the trusted nature that these entities have. While all of this is good overall news for the category, much still has to be done to overcome the obstacles some consumers have to accelerate their purchase intentions. Perceived usefulness by the loved one, cost and age rank among the top 3 factors for not purchasing an independent living smart technology solution. There is both a messaging and business opportunity here. Service providers can provide that human touch element by acting as a CTO to create a multi-year, long-term relationship with the customer. As we look forward, the tailwinds in this category should signal optimism and enthusiasm. Seniors and their caregivers are largely embracing the promise of these smart home capabilities as part of a 21st century independent living lifestyle. More options, more choice are helping to expand the overall market, and the stage is being set today for the elderly to maximize their quality of life safely and productively. Thanks again for your time. Let me now turn the presentation over to Josh Locke, Vice President of Essence USA, who will be conducting today's Visionary Insights presentation. Welcome, Josh.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Let me make sure I'm unmuted here real quick. Yep, I'm good. This is live, obviously.
Glad you could join us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mark and Parks, as your visionary today. Brief background on me. I've been in the medical monitoring industry for over 17 years in varying roles. Started at a home health agency and developed a readmission management program using what you talked about, the PERS devices way back then. And then 7 years as a medical monitoring service provider, monitoring those PERS, adaptive sensors, medical dispensers, and vital signs through telehealth programs. And then the last 8 years has been on the product side, the manufacturing side to deliver, the actual conduit to the data. But for independent living, IoT devices specifically and platforms. And I've been with Essence for going on 6 years now. Essence is a global manufacturer of independent living IoT products based in Israel. We're purely B2B to C. If you saw my interview recording earlier there, and our brand is typically lost along the way, AKA white labeled. Our healthcare products and platforms are deployed in over 25 countries, which means Essence is has the largest global reach of any healthcare manufacturer or provider in the space. And over the next 15 minutes or so, I'll go through some insights into one specific topic that's all the rage these days, remote patient monitoring. Specifically taking you through my experiences as it's evolved over the last 17 years, and then what the global market looks like today, some of the challenges, obviously, with remote patient monitoring programs as they evolve, where in general in-home services are headed. Today's remote patient monitoring interfaces and what they accomplish, and then what reimbursement models look like. And then I'll talk a little bit about RPM solutions, and then finally, what to look for when seeking an RPM partner. And I'll certainly, avoid being too sales pitchy here. There's very little about our company in here. So if you want to, you can reach out to me in LinkedIn. I'll be around at this event in the networking session after this. And then also, this is live, so there's going to be some time for questions at the end from the audience. So as they pop into your head, please jot them down, submit them into the chat, and we'll get to them at the end of the session. So let's go. So I think it's helpful to view the present boom in the context of historical innovation and investment waves, if you will. This chart looks at the last 20 years. Typically, there's a trigger, usually a disruptive technology, but sometimes it can be change in regulation that spurs innovation and investment, and the wave of startups, essentially. First wave of digital health innovation and investment during this 20-year period was brought on by widespread deployment of connectivity, the mobile broadband or 3G, leveraging new technology. A variety of health applications were deployed, including telehealth during this wave. The second wave of innovation and investment was spurred by the passage of the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, in 2010. The United States, which accounts for half of all the global healthcare spend, radically transformed its healthcare information priorities, creating huge demand for healthcare enterprise software tools. The biggest exit, in this wave was DB Motion, acquired by Allscripts, as an example. More recently, since about 2015, the move to the cloud-enabled, greater use of, allowed for a greater use of artificial intelligence and big data for personalized medicine. So Medtronic and others acquired companies during this phase for those types of personalized medicine solutions. COVID-19, of course, created a new circumstance for the delivery of healthcare and a new wave of investment. that it must be, multidisciplinary as well, incorporating biology and electronics. So in 2020, a consortium of 4 global pharmaceutical companies announced the creation of a local R&D incubation center to commercialize these interdisciplinary bioconvergence of moonshots, basically. So I just want to present one slide on some numbers, and drivers to provide kind of a framework for our discussion. The net of this is to show you how large I believe, and the data shows that this wave actually is. Over the past 18 months, remote patient monitoring and telehealth in general has gained importance due to enforced restrictions resulting from COVID lockdowns. This has affected the senior population most, of course. Seniors are the people who are in the greatest need for remote home monitoring services, but these services and technologies, are often required a lot of activation from that patient itself, a lot of interaction. Therefore, the main event holding back its uptake is compliance and the ability of patients, and therefore the providers, to ensure that the measurements are taken timely. So these are all critical trends and are all on the rise, these 3 here. The patient is being more proactive and is being more accepted of technology in the home. There's a lot of data out there. It's all trending, on the upward massively. And communication from and to devices is becoming easier and much more powerful. I'll get into that a little bit more on some slides. And lastly, providers and payers are taking a more holistic approach to patient care. This to me is probably the largest missing trend that we've seen, pre-pandemic. So it's kind of forced the hand, which is, one positive outcome, right? Here's some challenges in providing remote care, basically. Varying needs that span from general management of health to emergency events. Mark alluded to this a little bit in his intro. Most programs don't have the bandwidth or the expertise to deal with all of the needs. In compliance is a tough one. It's a very heavy lift to incorporate a compliance piece into remote patient monitoring that actually works and is ultimately scalable. Lastly, is how is the data being leveraged, or is it being leveraged? There's so much data and passive data that can be collected, but it's very challenging to have all that data actually tell a thoughtful story. Also, with all the data, there's likely different platforms contributing that data that aren't working together. So I call it a kind of piecemeal data, if you will. So where are in-home health services headed? I'm going to put my clairvoyant hat on. Many different types of devices will need that answer to answer many different types of health-related things and lifestyle-related things. Patients are being sent home from hospitals with a variety of health issues and conditions, and they'll be giving devices that track differing parameters. When we send people home, we send them not only with devices, but also need to provide other services like education and mental health assistance, family support as examples. Hospitals want to send more and more people home, and much of the support they would be getting will be provided remotely and will need to be provided remotely. There's just not enough people. So more and more services will be provided in the home, obviously. We'll see more ownership over integrating all of the services, taking more ownership, as I mentioned earlier. We're already seeing greater governmental support in the US with reimbursement for RPM, but this will keep expanding. I believe there's going to be, opening of different types of technologies in the home that keep them home, not in nursing facilities. So there's a lot of interface options to act as that, conduit to the data. There's tablet and or phone applications. Many users find it complicated to use and maybe little bit more than what they actually need. Cell-enabled medical devices. It's hard to push compliance without phone calls. So if you got a medical grade device, with just a cell connectivity, there's no way to really interact unless you have a separate phone number to call. And also dedicated medical devices that have their own cell communications are expensive. Limited range of devices, device focus, as an example, you might need a blood pressure cuff and a weight scale that both have their own internal SIM cards and can get costly pretty quickly. And then lastly, using patients' personal smartphones or bring your own device. This is not, in my opinion, hasn't scaled as a solution for what I view as the most challenging of any remote patient monitoring platform. There's pairing challenges, different app versions, and then you got your smartphones, your iPhone and Android updating things, and you got to stay ahead of the game so something doesn't break. So what is needed? Ease of use. I've said that over and over. That'll lead to better outcomes, better compliance. Doctors need to see the right data at the right time. So integration of data is critical. Caregivers and service providers need the data to be delivered reliably and at the right time as well, but also it needs to be easily digestible and actionable. All activity information and health information, vital signs, falls and inactivity combined with blood pressure indications, et cetera, all that stuff. The regulators want to create a competitive environment among technology providers to improve the communication infrastructure. An example, 5G IoT network. So where are we with the reimbursement and how is remote patient monitoring defined? I think that's an important thing to talk about. There's a lot of differing views on what remote patient monitoring is. It reminds me of years ago, dating myself, but it still applies today, is, RPM was referred to as telehealth. There was no real RPM. Today RPM is defined by the reimbursement source, CMS. And then to me, that's a game changer. In the US Centers of Medicare and Medicaid Services, they've defined it as RPM involves the collection and analysis of patient physiological data that are used to develop and manage a treatment plan related to chronic and/or acute health illness or conditions. And there's five primary CPT codes that they list there. So at the beginning, they didn't define these stages. Who gets the device, who installs, who trains, what do you do with the data? CMS defining these stages is key to success, and reimbursement being defined as compliance, review, and action. That said, the issue and problem is scalability and a complex user experience. This affects compliance today. The regulatory process has made it easier for Medicare providers to deploy and get reimbursed, but it's still the compliance is critical. We polled our current and prospective customers, and they've all voiced the critical importance around simplicity in design and simplicity in the ease of use experience. And it needs to be seamless and easy in order to achieve the compliance and ultimately scalability of programs to get out to as many people as possible. So we know, like Mark mentioned, that personal emergency response systems are extremely scalable, easy. They're always there 24/7 in the event of an emergency, which is a big focus of, or should be a big focus of any remote patient monitoring program. There's even been use cases where a PERS device, just a PERS device, was used as a readmission management program, as quick access to kind of a health concierge with questions or concerns. Could be, do I take the red pill or the blue pill today? And that can be answered quickly. So this is a powerful piece to RPM, and to utilize a PERS as the hub for data simply makes sense. In addition to this, our partners have always been looking for a way for PERS to be reimbursed by Medicare, which it isn't today, just that particular service. And remote patient monitoring, utilizing a PERS as the hub, is a way to accomplish this, in a roundabout way. Now, here's where it gets a little pitchy. Disclaimer, a little pitchy. However, if anybody can tell me that this slide doesn't make sense versus having separate platforms for like telecare, emergency response, wellness, and remote patient monitoring, then I probably wasted my entire career and need to look at a different job. Maybe retail suits me, not sure. But remote patient monitoring programs need to be, thought of holistically. We're seeing that everywhere, and incorporate more than just monitoring of vital signs. However, it does need to be simple and seamless, even passive, with activities of daily living. So this is as deep as I'll dive into our VitalOn solution, but feel free. I think this slide really tells the future of monitoring, in-home monitoring. And please reach out to me. And I purposely left Q&As. I know we covered a lot. I'll certainly be able to provide this presentation to anybody that needs it. It's filled with some good information if you're looking at remote patient monitoring's partners. So thank you very much, and we can open it up to any questions.
Josh, that was terrific. Thank you for your time and your insights. And I think what we'll do before we actually a question just came up. There you go.
Okay.
What is the biggest challenge with integration? Can you share more of the role of interoperability and a unified solution, which is what you were hinting at toward the end? So do you have any commentary on that?
Yeah, integrations are challenging. We've actually done some partnerships, with mature platform partners that have all the integrations. We try to draw a pretty hard line of, we're an IoT manufacturer, which brings a lot of the things that can be the conduit to the data. And we do have cloud-based technologies and analytics and stuff like that. But we know when we need partners. So we've partnered with some platform providers that have integrations into Epic, MyChart, and some of the, Cerner is another one, that creates that kind of holistic view. We can certainly do direct integrations. We haven't yet. Our remote patient monitoring VitalOn is a new product to be launched in May. So we're early on. Like I alluded to earlier, all of our current customers in perspective are looking for simplicity, and frankly, probably already have their own platform with their own integration. So are really looking to us to utilize the PERS as a hub and incorporating all the data, around activities and vitals and putting it into their world, the partner's world.
We're getting another question here, which is kind of interesting. I think I know what the answer to this, but I'm going to let you, I'm going to tee it up for you, Josh.
All right.
Let's talk about the price points. Are they consumer friendly for these services?
Absolutely. The model is very similar to that of the PERS industry. The consumer doesn't own the equipment. Consumer's not buying it. But our hub is less than $200 at no volume commitments. And all the kind of the pieces and all that kind of stuff, they're $50 to $100, sometimes less if you're talking about just like a emergency pendant, stuff like that. So they're very affordable. And again, your install is reimbursable. Your monthly has if you're doing a reimbursement model under the CPT codes, it does allow for the same type of lease and monitoring, market or business model, if you will, so that you'll get the equipment back and you can refurbish them. They're medical grade devices, so they're meant to be, kind of beat up a little bit. So.
Well, Josh, that's great. That's about all the time we have. But
Okay.
Thank you again for your time and insights. That's terrific. We're going to see a short video, and then we'll go right into our executive Q&A with that Elizabeth Parks will be moderating. But again, Josh, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Welcome back. That was great to hear from Josh with Essence. And now I'm excited to welcome Adam Sobal, CEO of CareBand, a location-based health and safety wearable solution for people living with dementia. Adam has had an awesome career in technology, and I want to point out in 2017 was named to AARP's Innovation Leaders for Healthcare. Welcome, Adam. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Let's start off with a quick introduction of CareBand and your vision.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to share more about CareBand with you and the opportunity that we see with CareBand. So CareBand got started about 5 years ago, focused on helping seniors living with dementia and Alzheimer's stay safe and out of the hospital. Quick background, my background specifically is in software engineering and cybersecurity, yet I come from a family of doctors. And specifically, my dad is a geriatrician. So growing up, I went to a lot of nursing homes, learned about senior care. Never thought I was going to get into this space, but truth be told, or as it works out, this kind of low power wide area network technology and low power technologies came out about 5 years ago, and I told my dad about it. And he said, what if you could use this technology for people living with dementia to keep them safe? So started exploring the market and realized that there's a large opportunity to use technology for this space and update the technology that's in the nursing home, update the technology that's in for people living at home, and to really help them to age gracefully. In terms of what CareBand is, as you had mentioned, it's a wearable solution that allows you to do three main things. At the core is location tracking, so understanding if someone's in their bedroom, their bathroom, their kitchen, and then understanding when they cross a barrier like an exit, and then where they are when they go outside. So that's location at the core. The second layer is context within location. So not just understanding that someone's in their bedroom, but what are they actually doing in their bedroom or in their bathroom, for example? Are they brushing their teeth? Are they washing their hands? Understanding a little bit more about that context and the activities of daily living that are happening in those different areas. The third layer is macro behavior detection. So we're working with the NIH on a number of different studies right now to understand different neuropsychiatric behaviors of dementia. So agitation, depression, socialization, engagement, being able to quantify these different symptoms or types of behaviors, and then be able to understand different changes in those behaviors over time. So those are the feature set. The really unique part of CareBand is that we don't require the use of Wi-Fi or a smartphone to send the data back. One of the challenges that we had in building out this technology early on was that there were three main challenges that our customers kept coming back to us with. One was that we needed a device that you could set up really easily without having IT support or knowing too much about technology. The other thing was that we needed to have a small device with a long battery life. And then the third one, which is the major one, is that there was an infrastructure challenge in that a lot of senior living facilities, as well as people living at home, don't have Wi-Fi in their environment still, and don't have smartphones with them all the time. So getting data from point to point was going to be a big challenge. So we came up with a new solution around using a low power wide area network technology to support this.
Awesome. Thanks for that background information. That's amazing how many checkoffs you're solving there with your technology and device. I know we're focused in here on the home care and assisted living, but I wanted to just give you the opportunity to share if there are other environments that you're using CareBand in, and then we will focus in on the senior living side of things. But can you share any other environments you're using this on?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we built this technology specifically for people with dementia under all these constraints that I had mentioned as well. But what we've learned is that using this end-to-end wearable solution, there's actually a lot of different use cases outside of senior living. So companies from small VC-backed startups to billion-dollar companies have approached us to use our end-to-end wearable solution for different applications, such as industrial safety or lone workers, for children, for smart pet and animal tracking. So various other applications where the same kind of location and infrastructure challenges exist, and they can leverage basically what we built with a few tweaks. So it's been really exciting to be able to apply the technology to those other applications as well.
Okay, great. And we are going to come back at the end of our conversation to talk more about hardware as a service. But before we go there and before we dive into the caretaker roles, can you maybe tell us a little bit more about the Amazon Sidewalk technology? So this could be considered a little controversial. So I want to give you the chance to share why that is so important in the role it's playing within these devices.
Yeah, so there's a lot to kind of unpack here with Sidewalk. So like I mentioned, one of the big challenges that we've had with building out the solution is an infrastructure challenge, in that a lot of seniors living at home don't have Wi-Fi or don't have a smartphone with them all the time. And a lot of people living in a senior living facility like a nursing home might not have Wi-Fi in the building as well. So having that data connectivity from our device to the cloud was a challenge initially with our device. What we ended up doing was using this technology called LoRa. Basically, it allows you to send small amounts of data over significant ranges, anywhere between 0.5 mile and 3 miles of range. About 2 years ago, Amazon started looking into this technology and named it Sidewalk. And basically, what they did was, instead of you putting up a router and a gateway and managing this network on your own, or us managing it on our own, they embedded this technology in some of their Amazon Ring devices and their Amazon Echo devices. So now this technology that is out there in millions of people's homes is kind of creating a mesh network for products like Hairband and others to be able to support. What this basically enables is for Hairband to utilize this network so that you basically have a safety net in these neighborhoods where Hairband and other devices can leverage to be able to deliver their services without having to install additional infrastructure. The other thing that Amazon did, which was very smart from my perspective, is they really put a lot of effort into the security and privacy side of these devices and the network protocol. So from end to end, a few different layers of encryption, which is significant for us as well. And then we put our own layers of encryption on top of that. So we see a lot of opportunity and a lot of value in the time that they put into their security and privacy infrastructure around this network.
Well, sure, and that's a great point there, because I think that's where some of those concerns are in sharing those private networks, those private-public partnerships sometimes can get consumers very concerned. So that was an amazing, concise way to explain all that. So gotta love the technologist who can, explain things well in layman's terms. So let's dive deep into seniors and caretakers and COVID-19 and what this has done for your business, as well as the vision that you have in serving consumers and caretakers.
Yeah, so COVID-19 has been interesting for everyone. In the senior living space initially, we've seen a lot of interest from assisted living providers bringing more remote patient monitoring tools into their kind of inventory and being more accepting of this technology and being proactive about it. So that's been exciting from our side. We've had a lot of conversations with large assisted living facilities and CCRCs around bringing technology in and being proactive around technology. On the aging in place side, of course, it's been an acceleration for telemedicine. We've already seen that. We also, an unintended side of the pandemic has been, as there's been more people that have been working remotely, there's more people around the neighborhoods, which allow, older adults to be able to walk around in a more safe way. So there's been some interesting sides, non-technical, that have also been really good from the COVID-19 standpoint.
Okay, great. Yeah, and I can just throw out some of our research on those 65 plus age groups, so that we are showing 34% of 65 plus own a smart speaker or smart display, 26% are now using virtual tools or telehealth, and 76% of them own a smartphone. So certainly the 65 plus up category and that perception that they don't know how to use technology is really not there anymore. It might have been 15 or 20 years ago, but we have a new group of consumers who have aged like all of us and are very accepting and even willing to pay for these types of services, especially in looking at those caretakers. So let's talk a little bit more about how you're approaching the caretakers with these solutions. How are you sharing this solution with them, and how are they understanding that value so that you can capture that opportunity and change the experience they have with their loved ones?
Yeah, so to tie into the question around Sidewalk and Amazon a little bit with that, I think, as you mentioned, there is this new adoption of folks who are interested in using technology, and you can kind of identify the individuals who are interested in technology based on if they have Echo devices or if they have kind of smart speakers in their homes, which is also a positive for us because it helps us to be able to identify those people and gives us a pathway into those people's homes much quicker than doing marketing to the masses of people. So that's one thing that's kind of positive out there. The side of caretakers and talking about Alexa too, there's this big piece around Alexa Care and Alexa Care Hub. And we're seeing a lot of interest between voice-to-voice communication and being able to, notify caregivers that might be in a different place around changes in health or falls or, other activity changes via their smart speakers. The other side with caretakers and using kind of the CareBand solution, we're really focused on moving from kind of subjective observation to objective monitoring. So today in the world of agitation, for example, a lot of agitation is based on kind of surveys around, there's kind of a Pittsburgh agitation scale, which is a very well-known scale used in the nursing home. And people fill out this scale and, whatever the score is at the end tells you if that person is agitated. What we really want to do is kind of move away from the scale side and the observation and move it more towards using sensors to be able to monitor and quantify what that behavior is, and then take that data that's quantifiable now and put it into a clinical decision support tool for the caregiver to be able to identify when those changes have happened in that person's life. Then, beyond that, there's opportunities to share that with physicians or the clinical staff. But there's a lot of opportunities to use that objective quantitative data in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can imagine in that transition of care, whenever that comes in play for people, that the sensor-based technology can also play a huge role. Can you explain your view on that?
Yeah, so transitions of care is something that's been challenging for the healthcare world for a long time. When somebody, for example, is living at home, then breaks their hip, has to go to the hospital, get surgery, then go to a nursing home and get physical therapy for a month, and then kind of hopefully move back to their home or maybe assisted living. There's a lot of transitions over time. There's a lot of opportunity to use smart technology to be able to enhance and accelerate that transition and be more transparent about how their progress is over that transition. What we see right now in terms of when these transitions happen is that families, for example, are left out of the loop, or even their general PCP is left out of the loop. And using sensors and data with these individuals, we can actually follow a patient and follow their journey and understand if they're improving or if they're not improving, and then give them ways to accelerate their improvement.
Okay, great. Before we move into talking about the product, the hardware side, and the services attached, I want to go ahead and take a question from our audience. So can you tell me if you see the bigger opportunity on the B2C side or the B2B side, with targeting facilities and RPM programs? Where is that opportunity for you all?
Yeah, so there's a massive opportunity on the B2C side. The challenge has been we've seen a lot of senior care companies and wearable companies specifically try and attack that market and fail miserably because it just takes a ton of money and a ton of time. If you don't have the right partners in place, it's very hard to actually attack that $2 billion opportunity. The other side is the infrastructure piece that I mentioned. Without that infrastructure partner, it's also very hard to scale. So I think there's a massive opportunity there on the B2C side, but it's challenging to actually build a sustainable business without having a significant amount of money to invest in and significant partners, trusted partners. Where we've been focused over the past 5 years is in the B2B side, really focused on assisted living and nursing home and memory care. The concept there too is if we can prove out that the solution works very well in those environments, then moving into the at-home environment is just tweaking some things for their environment. So that's really been our focus. And we see going forward that there's still going to be these two branches of Caravan, one in senior living and then one in the aging in place market, and learning and using lessons back and forth from both of those. The last thing I'll mention is on the research side. So we do a lot of research with the NIH and the NIA, and being able to leverage the research and the insights that we're getting from there into either the senior living product or into the aging in place product, it's going to be extremely valuable for the future. And again, it's just learning from everything and implementing the different features in different places.
Absolutely, and certainly the government has a vested interest in, figuring out how to leverage technology and that's most optimal for cost structure as well as the consumer experience. Let's jump though and just talk about the role of tech giants, especially since we're talking to B2C versus B2B. So, what is the role of the tech giants? They're huge. They're intimidating. They're potentially taking over everybody's world. What is their role for healthcare and the consumer marketplace?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think, similar to what I said earlier, a lot of tech giants have tried to get into this aging in place market and not been able to do it. We've seen Google try in this health market recently and had to pull out. So, healthcare is hard. And then when you think about aging in place and senior care, it's even harder. So I think they definitely have a role from a technology and scaling and support and, building solutions out kind of perspective, but you really need industry experts to actually support you. So folks who are in public health or folks on the ground, like aging organizations, to help you in those local communities to actually build a solution that's useful for that context. The best example I can think of right now is we're working with University of Minnesota on a rural and indigenous population study right now. And really the way the big challenge there is that we really need to talk to the community partners to figure out how to actually make our devices context and culturally accepted in those communities. And I think tech giants have a challenge going from this big mindset to a smaller community-based mindset. So that's a challenge, but they definitely have a role to play. Just trying to figure out where it fits.
Well, certainly we same thinking as you in terms of Google and Apple both kind of taking a step back, but I have a feeling they're going to come back with something as they normally do. We do have another audience question. So here it is. How are you managing the more acute concerns among seniors for privacy as well as data security? And I think you touched on this earlier, but maybe you can reemphasize that point.
Yeah. So there's a lot of things to talk about here. I think the big thing is that from a device manufacturer and a solution provider, we've thought about security from the ground up. So from our devices and the hardware, we have secure elements and encryption straight on the device. And then specific protocols as data gets passed. So data in motion and data at rest is very structured, and there's controls around that. And then once we're at the cloud, we're actually using an AWS serverless infrastructure and relying on a lot of security controls based on these different services that we're using. So there's kind of security across the end-to-end spectrum of the solution. In terms of privacy standpoint, again, on the user interfaces and the who has access to that data, there's been a lot of thought. We have customers in the US and in the EU, a lot of thought depending on which location it is, but focusing around a GDPR kind of mindset and building towards that standard so that we can ensure that customers have access and control over their data while being able to provide the solution to the folks who need it.
Sure, and we've certainly been doing quite a bit of research in that question around GDPR and data and transferring across countries or state lines and the implications there for businesses. That does get into this topic about the role of hardware as a service. And so, as you know, and as our audience knows, if you could make the device or the thing in the home connected and it provides some value to the business as well as the consumer, then that is where everybody is headed and looking for those software updates and that reoccurring service revenue that becomes the foundation of businesses for customers. So I saw a great post that you made on LinkedIn, and so I want to bring this topic up and get your perspective on it.
Yeah, it's another great topic. I think we could probably spend 30 minutes just talking about that. We've seen over time that hardware companies and big industrial companies, everyone's trying to get into the service game, the subscription game. And I think there's an opportunity to do it with hardware, but you really have to provide value beyond just the device and the initial function. So, when we think about our device as CareBand, our initial function was just wander management. Can we be able to detect and know where someone is? Are they safe at home or where they are? That's kind of a solution. Maybe you could just do as a hardware one-time cost and bundle it all up. But the real value is not just knowing where they are, but are they safe where they are? And are they staying healthy? So that's where the machine learning and the continual learning of the algorithms to enhance the solution and the value really comes out. So having that service element and the subscription element is really key to our business. And it really, as it's kind of the network effect, as more people get on the network or get using the devices, our algorithms just get better and better. So it's kind of better together kind of sense there. So I see a lot of opportunity to continue to scale as a subscription and service-based model.
Okay, great. And certainly a lot of other companies do as well. Let's talk a little bit more about the processing and the role of, where that processing is occurring and the reference to machine learning and what the implications are really. I mean, we could look now, but I think if we fast forward 3, 5, 10 years in the future, the technology that we see now that will continue to be developed has major implications for, privacy and security, the future of data, and then actually where is that processing taking place? So maybe if you could dive a little bit deeper into that for us.
Sure. Yeah. We've been excited about this concept of edge computing for a long time. The components haven't quite been ready yet, but we're kind of at that peak where components are now ready and there's actually processing power that's on the devices where we can run this kind of edge computing infrastructure. And when I say edge computing, basically today the traditional model is, the device is out in the field or out in the home. Data is being sent up to the cloud. And at the cloud level, you're doing all the processing of that raw sensor data and turning that into insights and then pushing that out to the customer. What we're seeing, though, is being able to process that data locally on the edge really addresses these challenges around privacy, security, and cost. You can now collect that data, analyze it in real time, and then make decisions faster, which is really the exciting part. So we see a lot of opportunity here. The other big opportunity is when you keep that data local, the HIPAA compliance and the security and privacy compliance all increases as well. So instead of having to send all of that data out, keeping it local in a home is quite valuable. The other piece about the edge computing and the promise of it is that in these remote and indigenous and rural communities where they might not have great healthcare access or where connectivity might be lacking, edge computing is really a pathway towards providing the same level of availability of care as you would in a high functioning city environment. So we see a lot of opportunity, a lot of cost savings really to be able to implement edge computing on our devices and on many other devices out there.
Okay, great. And I have another question from the audience asking about whether insurance providers, if you're talking to providers and that possibility of reimbursements for solutions like these.
So we definitely see an opportunity for reimbursement in the future. Today, our customers in the senior living environment, current devices that are being sold around wander management are not reimbursable devices. So for that market need, we don't need to have need to go down the reimbursement path. But as you go into more of the behavior changes and behavior detection side of things, that's where the reimbursement and the FDA classification is more valuable. Our plan right now is, as we're going through our NIH studies, that at a certain point we'll start going down that path of the FDA classification route. We have talked to a few insurance companies, and there's a lot of value in the work that we're doing. And they do see a significant opportunity to reimburse it in the future. So more to come, but it is definitely a pathway that we're exploring.
That's great. On those NIH studies that you're working on, is that ultimate goal, of course, is to understand the market and the growth and where things are, but is it meant to show the government that role of technology, sensor-based devices and services, how that can have an impact on clinical outcomes? I mean, is that ultimately what you're looking for, is that validation? Yeah, most of the grants that we're doing are kind of SBIR or STTR grants. So it's usually partnering with a different university who's an expert in dementia or Alzheimer's care, and then proving something out and then moving towards an intervention or a detection kind of side of things. The ultimate goal is to improve patient outcomes, but it kind of is a step-by-step process. So we see an opportunity to do that, but it's going to take a few more years until we can actually show real results there. Okay, great. Well, I know we do have some NIH people in our audience because I saw them get registered, and we're actually talking to their group maybe about presenting in our December session on interoperability. So let's talk about product development and distribution. So, COVID has changed everything, including chips and supply chains, and the disruptions there across the electronics industries are just crazy. Tell us what you're seeing. Yeah, so I thought COVID was really hard to get through as a small company, and then we get faced with this global chip shortage. So yeah, it's quite challenging. With the COVID side of things, when nursing homes and senior living facilities were shutting down, we could pivot to doing contact tracing and pivot to other applications and other focus areas. But with the chip shortage, if you don't have devices to sell, then you really can't do much of anything. So we are managing it the best that we can, trying to find alternatives in terms of building our solutions, reducing the components in the devices, thinking about moving from hardware implementations of things to software implementations. So trying all kinds of opportunities there. The good thing that I keep seeing is that there is a ton of interest in our device from around the world. We have multiple thousands of devices that are on back order right now, which is exciting. We just don't have the chips to fulfill those today. So it's going to be 6 months to a year until we can really get up to speed. That's what we're hearing from our component manufacturers, which is unfortunate, but it's the best that we can do in the current environment. Well, you're not alone in that. So lots of opportunity to plan for your execution when all of those materials come. So we do have another audience question. We've heard from other speakers that some trials have been put on hold because healthcare academic partners are overwhelmed by COVID. So are you currently doing trials, and has COVID dramatically impacted that ability to do that work? Yeah, so some of the trials that were supposed to happen last year have definitely been delayed due to outbreaks in some of the senior living facilities, as well as timing from the university standpoint. For the most part, everything from a university standpoint, and our partners at least are back up and running in terms of IRB, in terms of their collaborators' effort and timing. So that's really not the holdup. It's really from the site perspective and the patient population. So that's really the challenge right now. Okay, great. And another question about, do you have any kind of system based off of the metrics that comes back from your device that's able to rank people in terms of maybe where they're at? You had mentioned earlier a self-ranking agitation scale, I think is what it was. Do you all have something that would say we collected this amount of information based off of the sensor, and so that puts this particular person in this or that bucket? So it's a great question. We've had interest in that kind of a solution or kind of a system before. We don't have that today, but there's definitely interest, and based on the data that we have, you could foresee something like that in the future.
There is interest from a who to visit first in a nursing home standpoint in terms of like priority people. So we've had that question a few times from some of the insurance providers and some of the physician groups that we work with too. So there's definitely interest in that. We just don't have something built today.
Yeah, that seems like that once you get things really going and you have some aggregated data, that would be a great way to, be able to communicate based on the information that you've got. So let's talk a little bit about the future and where we're going. Things with COVID have created dramatic changes. And how do you envision the future of, I want to say elderly care, but that doesn't sound so good. So care for older people who want to live independently.
Yeah, I think there's a bright future. I really think we're at kind of the inflection point from an infrastructure connectivity perspective, as well as from a sensing perspective. There's a lot of interoperability conversations with kind of new protocols like Matter, as well as with Sidewalk. And then we're also seeing a lot of interest or a lot of technologies that have been in the lab for a long time getting to the market. So Wi-Fi sensing is a good example, or kind of Google implementing radar into their devices. So we're seeing some interesting movement there, which is cool. In terms of, communities and people at home, I see a future where there's more age-friendly homes and age-friendly communities, as well as being able to kind of influence or enable dignity and independence as people age. I think through the technology, this other term called ambient assisted living has been thrown out for a number of years. But again, using the sensors to be able to kind of support the individual living at home, we're at that point where systems can actually be developed and be implemented. And I think it's a very exciting future for everyone.
Yeah, certainly agree with that. So much opportunity and really lots of work for the industry to do. I love that you brought up the Matter initiative. Are you all part of that group, or?
We're not officially part of it, but we are keeping a close eye on that protocol.
Okay, great. And so for everybody's benefit, Matter is an initiative that is being done by the Connectivity Standards Alliance, which used to be Zigbee, and they are working to really solve the age-old problem of interoperability and allowing different devices from different brands to communicate and work with each other, which ultimately would provide this seamless, unified experience for the consumer. A simple plug and play is how we used to say back in the 90s, and we're still working towards that. So Adam, tell me why this is such an important initiative for the smart home space and really all connected devices for consumers.
Yeah, I mean, there's really a ton of different protocols out there today, from Zigbee to Bluetooth to Matter to Thread, all kinds of stuff out there. And as more devices are getting into the home, this interconnectivity is only going to increase in terms of importance. So having a standard where all of these tech giants, you asked about tech giants, helping, a lot of them are behind the Matter protocol, but being able to standardize on one protocol for smart devices, or being able to at least communicate on that protocol is really important for the whole industry. And I'm excited to continue to follow it, and hopefully it'll turn from an idea into something that's actually implemented in the next 18 months or so. So I'm excited to see it evolve.
Yeah, well, I'm sure those engineers are working behind the scenes really to try and make that happen. And I agree that it's a great initiative with a lot of promise. And certainly when you see Amazon, Google, Apple, all Samsung saying that we are going to have our devices work with each other, ultimately to provide a better experience for the consumer. You see that their heart is where it's at, which is the consumer experience. And to get to mass market adoption with some of this technology in the home, there's just no way around it. The interoperability issue has got to be addressed in some new ways. So it is a great initiative, and certainly one that we watch and fully support. So thanks for your comments on that. I want to end and just get a vision of where you see things in 5 years for CareBand and for the role that you all are playing for senior care.
So our vision over the next 5 years is to be able to enable 1 million seniors, at least 1 million seniors living with dementia, to successfully age in place for at least 6 months longer than they think they could have without having our technology. And we really see it from really a holistic wellness and kind of well-being perspective. So socially, emotionally, physically, there's really a large opportunity to support each kind of side of that trifecta using technology and using CareBand as a core solution to that. So we're excited for the future. There's a lot of work from all these different research projects and collaborators, as well as folks from our team. A lot of learning happening and a lot of conversations happening. So I think it's achievable, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you for your time today. I knew this would be an awesome discussion, so I appreciate you making the time to address our audience and wish you the best for the rest of your day.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm excited to continue the conversation.
Absolutely. So we will be right back with an interactive session focused on the smart home and healthcare. So join us here in just a minute. Thank you.
Hi, welcome back to the Connected Health Summit. Again, my name is Mark Vina, Senior Director of the Smart Home Research Practice Team at Parks Associates. Today's panel will focus on the platform dynamic and business opportunity of the smart home in the independent living space. This session addresses the latest innovations, challenges, and opportunities with the integration of connected health products in the home and the opportunity for smart home platforms to leverage the expanding ecosystem of connected devices in the home to serve residents' health and safety needs. With that, let me bring our esteemed panelist team up on the screen. and I want to give each of them a chance to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Andy.
Hi, how are you today? Thanks for having me. I'm very excited to be here. My name is Andy Droney. I'm the Senior Director for Health and Innovation Programs at ADT. As you may well know, the ADT name is the most trusted name in security, but we also have a very robust health business where we predominantly provide a line of PERS-enabled products to allow seniors to age gracefully, all with the goal of making life simple and safe for our customers, whether they be at home or on the go or in the office. Like I said, really excited to be here. I've been with ADT for about 13 years and been running the health business for about 3.5 years, and just glad to be here to participate in the panel. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Andy. Well, let's bring up Manish. Hi, Manish. Welcome to the event. Manish, is your mic working? Seconds. It's not unmuting. We'll move on to the next person, Manish, while you try to tackle that small technical difficulty. So next up, we've got Dan Messina. Dan?
Hi, my name is Dan Messina. Thank you for having me here today. I'm excited to be here and have an opportunity to discuss this topic. I'm this president and co-founder of Hands Free Health. Hands Free Health is a digital health platform, voice platform, which is intended to meet the needs of seniors in particular, and in assisted living facilities, as well as provide a personal emergency response system skill set for individuals. Previous to my involvement with Hands Free Health, I was one of the partners of Health Advocate, and before that, the CEO of Magellan Health Services and CFO of Aetna Health Care. Thank you for having me.
And thank you, Dan. And last but certainly not least is Lainey Muller. Lainey?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Mark, and thank you, Parks, for including Alarm.com. We enjoy being a part of Connected Health. So I am the Director of Health and Wellness at Alarm.com, and I've been with Alarm.com about 11 years, so I've participated in some of these discussions. I really appreciate what we're doing here today, especially given kind of where the world has been as it relates to health. And for those of you that don't know Alarm.com, so Alarm.com is the largest platform provider for the intelligently connected home. And we were founded in 2000 as a part of a research arm of MicroStrategy. So our beginnings are very much sort of grounded in data, interactive security, and remote monitoring, which has carried itself well into our wellness platform. We do have about 10,000 partner providers that we work with. We've got about 8 million customers, and we're in 40 countries now. And largely what I look after at Alarm.com is the wellness ecosystem with our team. And what you're seeing here on this slide is sort of how we have been in the market for the past 11 years that I've been with Alarm.com, and how sort of we see the role of health and wellness and the wellness ecosystem. How do we see the different hardware plays? What do we think about the service model? How do we simplify getting into the home? How to supply, as you move, in our arm, not being in intrusion and being on the health and wellness side, really looking at what is the innovative technology that we need to create to deepen the connection between people and the things that matter most, not just their home or their property, which is typically our security and our commercial teams, but how do we think about the people and their families? And that's really the health and wellness of the individual. I think we've spent the last probably 2020, 2021, and leading into 2022, really looking at, what is the health and wellness of the person? Who are we engaged with? Who's the buyer? how do we think about mobility? What is our role beyond the home? And so I'm excited to really sort of dive into, independent living and independent living solutions as a service in this discussion. And also really excited to see, and this is something, Elizabeth, I wanted to say to you, is that 73% of caregivers are looking for an independent living solution. I feel like that the people on this team have probably been saying that for a long, long time. And that's a number that is exciting to see. So thank you for having me.
Thank you. Let's go back to Paul. We have him back online. There we go. Paul?
Hey, Mark, I can hear you, but it appears my camera's been turned off and I can't override it.
Well, your voice is terrific, so I think your voice will work. Yeah, so your slide is up, Paul.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for the invitation to come and join you. Apologies for being late. I had I think the international timing made it challenging for you. I was expecting to be on in an hour's time.
Not a
so
problem.
look, I come from a company called Anthropos. We're based in the UK. We have a remote monitoring platform that we're using here with two of the biggest care providers in the UK. One in the kind of visiting care market, Home Instead, who I know are a big name in the US in domiciliary care, and AXA Taking Care as well, who are using it for remote monitoring. Both very much focused on, can we help older people, seniors, stay in their own homes for longer by providing those care providers with additional information about what is happening when no one's there.
Well, thank you, Paul. And before we get into the Q&A, let's get back to Manish. Manish, there he is.
Yeah, there you go. Apologies for the technical difficulties on my end. I'll be brief. Manish Gill, the Chief Operating Officer for Mayo Clinic platform. Been in this role for about 2 years now. I don't think I need to share who Mayo Clinic is, but Mayo Clinic platform is about a 2-year-old organization. As we think about answering the question, if Mayo today sees 1.2 million patients a year, how do we affect 1 billion lives? And so Dr. John Halamka, who's the president of the unit, and I are in charge of answering that question and really thinking about scale of complex and serious care. And so we've got several initiatives around distributing efficient care, distributing predictive care, making the home as the primary care setting for complex patients. So looking forward to the discussion today. Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the time today. This is such an incredible category. Lots of disruption, lots of opportunity, challenges, of course. I do want to kind of kick off the first question and lead with Dan. Maybe you could opine on this for us. The concept of connected care, I'm going up about 10,000 feet here, is relatively new. From your perspective, what are the potential benefits and the impact, both short-term and long-term, for seniors and their family caregivers? Can you give us, from your perspective and from your company's perspective, some insight on that question?
I'd be happy to. I think it's a very important question, first of all, and I think it's really the premise of our company. We are in an environment right now, and I think COVID-19 made this loud and clear, of individuals being isolated. And you can go back a few generations where when individuals were isolated, their loved ones maybe lived down the street. That's not the case anymore. The caregivers are in different locations, completely different zip codes, different states, different countries. And so having devices that allow a caregiver to understand how their loved one is adhering to medications, getting the physical care they need, and being able to communicate with them through a connection mode makes all the sense in the world. It allows for that caregiver to have some peace of mind. And I think it takes the isolation component away from that individual. And if you think about smart home and smart medical devices and the connections that all occur with those, to add the context of voice and to add the ability to communicate with the caregiver and do it in a secure, HIPAA compliant fashion is a winner.
Great, thank you. Now, another interesting question that I want to direct both to Andy, and then I'm going to follow it up with Lainey, is that traditional residential security companies are now, and it has happened actually for several years now, but they've kind of branched into the healthcare monitoring and the healthcare space outside the traditional residential security area. So, from Andy, from your perspective, give us some, talk to us about the synergies between, maybe ADT's foundational appeal to consumers, and now as you kind of branch into this brave new world and the monitor in the connected care area.
Sure. So I think traditionally, as a company, as a home security company, ADT, what I like to tell people, our bread and butter is our monitoring and the amazing monitoring agents that we have and the training that they have. The monitoring piece was of interest, and say like a PERS type device, an emergency medical alert. It made sense for us to monitor those types of signals and dispatch accordingly as well when we first kind of got into the business. And it's really evolved now where we've taken that expertise in the monitoring side of the business and what we've been able to do there. And as ADT has grown to a very, very large home automation, smart home security business, to take the technology that's available now in the home and try to repurpose either the devices or the services that we offer to allow seniors to age more gracefully or age a longer time frame in their homes. So if you think about the smart home and being able to connect all the different devices, whether they're security devices like a door and window sensor or a motion detector, et cetera, even some of the smart smoke alarms and smoke detectors. And while those were safety and security devices, they're gathering data and we can gain insights as to what's going on. Our ability to repurpose those devices that may already be deployed in millions of homes to say, hey, what's going on with the senior? How can we repurpose that information and make it useful for a senior who wants to stay home? So simple things like turning on lights when motion detectors, detect motion in the middle of the night so you don't trip and fall, and then starting to potentially even understand patterns of activity and take that and say, hey, is something going on with mom or dad? Is something going on with the person that I care for in the home in terms of their activity level or what their patterns are during the day, and being able to repurpose those, we think is a really, really good fit to what we currently do. And then you can tackle on top of that the security aspects of it, so we can protect, intrusion, but we can also take insights and gather information and share information to make insights about what's going on with, say, a person's health or their well-being, and to also encourage them to to take action, to move around. In addition to that, the caregiver aspect is really important, to provide insights to that caregiver to say, just something as simple as being able to take a motion detector and understand, like, when somebody wakes up in the morning, so I don't have to wake them up or call them and get them out of bed if they want to sleep in. Or if that's more of a concern, I can get a notification when they don't wake up at a certain time, and I can potentially take action there. So the prospects of what you can do with smart home and combining the technologies that were traditionally used for security type purposes, intrusion detection and life safety, can now be used to help we'll work on kind of smart aging and allow people to age in the place where they call home. So we think there's just incredible opportunities there, and it's transformed just simply monitoring to now taking all that information, combining a monitoring element with it, but also providing insights to the caregivers.
Great. Well, I want to be a bit equal opportunity here. Our other panelist who knows a couple of things about the residential security space, and by the way, the area that you're involved in very much, which is wellness and health. Lainey, let me get your perspective on that question.
Yeah, so I would sort of piggyback off of what Andy said. And by the way, hi, Andy. Good to see you. It is, I think it's really important to think through, what does smarter independent living look like? And if you trust your security provider every day for life safety or in any kind of peace of mind that you're seeking, I think what would be really important to think is, if life safety as a service is meaningful, what does personal safety mean to you? And when we started in this market, largely what was known was PERS. So it was emergencies in the home. If that is sort of translated into security speak, that's an alarm state. What we quickly realized is that by being in the home and making sense of what a typical day looked like, so the patterns of activities in the home, and then being smart enough to make sense of what a typical day is and what an outlying event would look like, that would be something that if you were providing a service at a distance, which caregivers typically are, is if we were really good at interactive security and we could tell if someone were entering a home, we should be able to remotely manage a home from a distance, which is typically a caregiver, and be able to make sense of the activities of daily living in addition to emergencies, so that we could push the model to a proactive and preventative approach versus a reactive approach. So I think we've done that really well. We've had the trust. I think it's also been important over the course of the past decade that we've been in this space, is really looking at, okay, if it is smarter independent living and we know that most people want to live at home, how do we actually operationalize that model? How do we bring that into someone's home? And I think we've done a good job of that with our dealer partners, is being able to simplify technology, not only for the user, but also to the provider, so that they can get that in, make it work, and then provide a connection to the people who care. So I think we've been well positioned for that. I think the rising awareness of the importance of being able to be proactive and preventative about care and having those kinds of insights and that data, and then alerting around that, that's where I think it gets interesting in a service model.
Thank you. And, going back to what Andy said a moment ago, I really love the phrase about repurposing technology that you were using for traditional capabilities like residential security, now applying those capabilities to the on the connected care and wellness side. That to me is absolutely a fascinating thing. I want to flip this over to Manesh and talk a little bit about, the Mayo Clinic is obviously one of the great medical organizations in the world, has been for many decades. I want to talk a little bit about the changes in use cases that the Mayo Clinic has seen, from a platform standpoint, and just give us some perspective on how much of that has been influenced by COVID, what trends you may have seen before COVID kicked in, but would love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, you bet. So our current leader and CEO, Dr. Gianrico Ferrugia, he laid out a 2030 strategy, which was really a bold reinvention of Mayo beyond, think about the word cloud that exists around Mayo, complex care, research, education, all the words that you would expect of a world-class academic medical center. You wouldn't see technology platform innovation very high up. And so how do we get those embedded in there? And coming off of that, he asked us to really think differently. So at the time we had initiatives around remote patient monitoring, e-consults, teleconsults, looking at partnerships with the companies that are in the home on a regular basis, like security companies. He said, let's stop. Let's really rethink what the patient needs. And it comes down to, at some point, a patient's or a consumer is going to turn into a patient. Then what? How do you actually create the trust that independent living can actually result in true independent living with a safety net of healthcare in and around them in the comfort of their home? And our first endeavor started pre-COVID around what is now called hospital at home, which is, can you take care of a patient that is otherwise eligible, in fact, required by our care protocols to be in a hospital, post-surgery, post-ED, and take care of them in the home. And so we went down that pathway, we are a partner first. So everything we do in the platform is partner heavy. We're not trying to build anything ourselves. Identified a partner in Medically Home, and they've been at it for 10 years. And COVID massively accelerated this effort. So I don't know that we were prescient, but we were certainly lucky, because during COVID, we were able to spike up virtual beds in our various facilities as this was going through, and expand capacity. So if our ICU beds were at 100%, we could add 10, 20, 30, 40 beds, either not COVID or COVID, but we're not exhibiting a highly acute situation, to the point where that is now normal course. Today, Mayo Clinic across 2 of our sites operates a 40-bed virtual hospital. So we have 40-bed capacity that's entirely virtual. And we're expanding that to our 2 other sites here over this year, with a goal of having a couple hundred beds that are entirely virtual. So if you think about independent living and having the ability to have an organization like Mayo Clinic or a local health system that you trust monitor and measure you and give you comfort of going back to your home versus sitting in a bed, for an aging population where you have complexities like your spouse might be aging as well. You really want to be apart for weeks on end. Those are the things we tackled, and patient satisfaction is better at home than at Mayo. So 95% versus 85%. Clinical results are better, and we're doing it at a lower cost, all enabled by technology and services. So that's a redefinition of home care. It's a redefinition of hospital, and that's the feature that we're stepping gas on.
Dan, I want to flip the question over to you about getting back to kind of the smart home platform topic of this session. When you look at it from a usage model platform standpoint, what are the most popular devices from a category standpoint, and the usage models that are really impacting the lives of seniors, caregivers, family members, of course, who care very much about their loved ones? Can you get into a little bit of detail on what you're seeing in terms of the focus on those? Some of them may be emerging. Some of them have probably been in play for quite some time. Some of them, of course, have been given a bit of kick in the pants because of COVID. But giving your perspective on what you think the most appealing platform and usage models are.
Happy to. And I think one of the key features here is that you have to have some level of simplicity when you're dealing with the senior market in particular, and recognize the senior market has different phases of aging, as I think Lanny pointed out in her comments. To me, voice and telehealth are the obvious answers there, and ones that if you can allow the senior through their voice to be reminded, I should say, of taking medications, and ask any question about any healthcare related matter, be able to contact their caregiver, and to be able to detect when they've fallen. Simple things like that, which are frankly old school and have been used for quite some time in other areas, but not among seniors and not among delivering care. And so I think, we get into this, we got to be careful not to get into this higher than now mindset that we can put all these tools and technologies together and generate outcomes for seniors if they're not going to use it. And so what we try to build tools that are quite simple in the way they're delivered, while also providing entertainment, audio books, be able to answer general questions, be able to play puzzles and meditations, etc., to try to really become the companion for that senior 24/7. And I think it may seem simple, it may not be exciting enough for some technology wizards, but really it does come down to that, being able to make a device and product that's usable, understandable, but at the same time generates the outcomes you want, which is adherence to medications, informing your caregiver if you're not adhering to your medications, reminding you what you need to do and not do, and really generally being a companion.
And by extension, you think voice control obviously is a big deal. in this space?
Oh,
You know, almost disproportionately from a senior standpoint.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that, you know, voice has been around for so many years right now. Many people have different devices that use voice within their own home. But from a senior's perspective, voice is critical. And to be able to use voice and recognize an individual's voice and have a security feature associated with it, so it's HIPAA compliant. And you know, the senior feels like they have a companion at the home.
Right.
Literally. And that's the way to deliver it in our judgment, and feedback and in our focus groups, et cetera, is proven that.
Let me, we've got an audience question here. This is for Andy. For ADT, are you targeting seniors for this new solution, your new capabilities, or is it waiting until the need arises? And how big is a problem? How big is connectivity as a problem? So, would love to get your view on that, Andy.
So I'd say right now we're looking for those solutions and trying to determine our go-to-market strategy, if you will, in terms of getting to those seniors. Obviously, we have a whole host of systems deployed, millions of them out in the U.S. today. But I'd be remiss to not mention our recent partnership with Google in terms of what they can enable for us on the hardware side and the software side to start to reimagine some of these connections as well. Yes, connectivity is currently a hurdle, I'd say, if you will. However, I feel like as you're looking at connectivity in the home, it continues to rise, and seniors' ability to handle and utilize technology is growing almost daily, I would say. I'd say 5 years ago it was a little bit more difficult. Now, as folks age into that category, they've been exposed to and utilizing technology for quite some time. So the connectivity piece is certainly going to be a challenge as we try to figure that out. However, the comfort with different technologies, whether they be voice enabled, I think one of the keys to the successful deployment is making it easy to enable in terms of setting it up. So if it doesn't require a lot of difficulties to set up, if it's intuitive and also it's not difficult to utilize, it's more kind of running in the background and it becomes a part of the everyday life. That's where I think the success is going to be in deploying the smart home strategies into the aging in place space. If you can make it easy, I think voice is one of those technologies where seniors have gotten very comfortable utilizing those, and I think that's going to be one of the keys as we move along.
Lainey, let me ask you a question. We've got an audience question about how big a deal. I already know the answer to this, but I want to give you a chance to help give us your perspective. How big is the 3G sunset? Which, for those people who don't know, in the residential security, you know, having continued connectivity with a cellular device is very important. 3G has been around forever, but like all technologies, they have to migrate. They sunset out, and new technologies come in. But what's your perspective on that from an Alarm.com standpoint?
Well, I think it's been a big initiative for our company to always stay current and also to consider, you know, how do we prepare for something like that? How do we prepare our partners? And we've been at this for quite a while. But then also, you know, are there ways that as we move forward that we, you know, don't have these dependencies, you know, as we move along? We haven't been as involved in it with the health and wellness side, so I haven't been as actively involved, but I do know that is something that Alarm.com overall is facing. Andy, you might know even more. Yeah. Actually, you're probably in it day in and day out.
Andy?
Yeah, it's a big program that we're working through and moving into 4G, not only on the health side, but also on the residential security side with all the cellular radios that we have. It's one of those other items that we're positioned well with in terms of our technician workforce being out there and being able to service customers from across the country to provide that, you know, the swap outs, if you will, and the upgrades to the radios that we currently have in place and moving up to the 4G. So.
Yeah,
go ahead, Lee.
I was just going to add, to us, it's a big deal. it is a big deal. And I think that the 3G sunsetting in 2022, we're getting feedback from dealers throughout the country pushing 4G products and looking for 4G products that can deliver the same outcomes for individuals. So it has been a big deal for us in a positive way for our company.
I think just to sort of piggyback on the connectivity piece, I think that actually is a big part of this around care and accessibility, and even willingness to have that kind of connection in your home has changed fairly significantly over the past decade. I mean, we've seen that in our video offerings, and kind of to talk about what Dan, you said, engagement is. What we found is there needs to be a reason for the user and or the resident, not just the adult child that may influence this decision, but for the person that actually is using this to see benefit. So if it is that they can use a doorbell camera and see who's at their front door as they're trying to get down the stairs with mobility challenges, there's a lot of peace of mind there. But as an adult child that has a mom living remotely, I'd love to know if is meal delivering showing up? Does she actually getting packages, with prescriptions in it? So like the social determinants of health and engagement are pieces that you really didn't see a long time ago. It was really strictly personal emergency. And then it sort of moved into falls and, how do we create those connections? I think it's much larger now, and having partners that are both in the security space, but also those that provide those kinds of connections. So we have a team that focuses on network service providers, and that piece of bringing care into everybody's home, regardless of where you live, is key for this to scale.
Thank you. There's a great question right here on, and I'm going to flip this over to Paul, because it's relatively high level from a, it's almost a philosophical question. There's lots of discussion around health equity and social determinants of health. And I guess the question that's being asked is, how can you drive health equity if we don't have connection equity? And part of that sounds like it's an infrastructure question as well. But do you have a view on that, Paul?
Yeah, I'm not well placed to talk about the infrastructure question. I think we are interested in social determinants of health. We're very much interested in melding together the intelligence that we can get, not just from what is happening in the home of the older person, but also what do we know about them from their medical records, potentially what could you know from the other, the social determinants of health data, and bringing all of those things together. One of the things that we're closely working on at the moment is improving falls prediction, which is very, very difficult to do. You can't really predict a fall, but what you can do is use lots of different data to predict an increase in the fall's susceptibility.
Great. By the way, we do have a couple of great poll questions that we'll get to in a second. I don't know, do we have enough data now for the polls? Just lost Paul, but I'm sure Paul might be better. There he is.
I can still see and hear you guys. I don't know where that cut out for me as well while I was talking.
I'm sorry, Paul.
Talking.
You want to finish your thought?
Yeah. So, Mark, I'll just finish and say, we're very interested in collecting more and more data that can help us understand more about what is likely to happen to the person. I think at least three of the people here have talked about, the ability to predict. Predicting what might happen to someone is very difficult without a lot of background data about their previous, their previous health condition, what is happening in their home today, and what predicting what might happen next is actually quite hard to do.
Let's see here. An audience question here. Is that our audience question? What kind of price points are being charged for these monthly services? Let me give that to Andy and to Lainey, but we'll start with Andy just to kind of bring people up to speed on what we're talking about from a dollars standpoint. Because as I mentioned in my opening comments, this is a big revenue opportunity. You know, if you look at it from a whether it's moderate self-monitoring capability or even professional monitoring. But give us an idea from an ADT perspective of what a family or a caregiver is looking at, or a patient is looking at for these type of capabilities.
So in terms of, depending on the equipment that's deployed in say a smart home, there's an upfront equipment cost, and then you're looking at, I'd say, $35 to $55, $60 a month, depending on how robust the equipment is and the services you have attached to it. But on the flip side, from our PERS product, if you will, ranges from 25 for a landline-based device a month to about $40 for our mobile GPS-enabled unit that folks can take anywhere that they like to go. So the price points aren't terribly exorbitant. I think the more that you want to do in terms of deploying more equipment and more services, obviously that adds to it. But one of the ways that we think about it as we start to conceptualize what we're going to do around these types of services is, comparatively speaking, when you're talking about, can I deploy these technologies that will allow my loved one to stay at the place that they call home for a longer period of time, compared to if they were to move to an assisted living facility or a nursing home, if you will. Those costs are extremely higher than what we're trying to do there. And there's two aspects to it. One aspect is the cost for the person who's being cared for, but the other piece is many times the decision is not a single person saying, I want to go into an assisted living facility. Most of the time it's an adult child or a caregiver who makes that decision for the person. And some of it is, yes, they need additional care that may not be able to be provided because that caregiver is remote or doesn't have time. But sometimes the caregivers just experience fatigue and are like, I can't do this anymore because I have other responsibilities I have with my younger children, et cetera. And they make that decision to move them on. So if you can, comparatively speaking, as the price goes up, sometimes you might think, oh, this is expensive. It gets up into the $100 range or whatnot a month. Comparatively speaking to moving someone into an assisted living facility, it can be quite a bargain, if you will. And I think that's kind of the approach that we're taking, is if I can provide a large number of the services that they may be able to get in an assisted living facility at a significantly lower price, and allow them to stay a couple more years at the place that they call home where they really want to be, that's a benefit for everyone. And it also frees up some of that time to allow the caregiver to provide some of those social interactions, instead of the caregiver coming over and constantly hassling mom and dad of, have you taken your medicine, have you done X, Y, and Z, et cetera. They can just have a discussion on how was your day, because they know that those things have been cared for, because they've been reminded to take their medication through the technology, or they've been reminded to move around and get up, move around, et cetera. There doesn't have, the conversation is not constantly, what are you doing? Have you done the stuff that you need to take care of yourself? It can be more, hey, how was your day?
I want to go to the first poll question we have. This is a really fascinating cut. The question in our poll was, what is the most important connected health technology benefit for independent living? And anytime you get in a survey question, you get something in the 60s. That's a pretty strong number. And peace of mind for family and loved ones right now, at least with the audience we have online, is scoring at 64%, followed by general quality of life improvements at 14%. Now, I would have actually expected that number to be a bit higher, but it seems that at least with this audience online, they're identifying, peace of mind as really the predominant reason why they believe connected health technology can benefit their lives. So what's your reaction to it? Let's go back to, do we have Manish? Is he, Manish, can you hear me? I know you were having some connectivity.
Yeah, I can.
What's your thought on that? What's your thought on that poll response?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely right. At the end of the day, people are looking for comfort and convenience, and I'm not surprised. The question I always come back to is that translate to willingness to pay? And that's what we all struggle with. What's here? is it a caregiver? So the child or child of an aging loved one? Is it a an extension of a home care facility? What is the underlying business model that's going to translate from that benefit that the patients here or consumers are getting? That's been the elusive one, and I say again from a health system perspective, our goal is what can we do to simplify the patient experience and continue it. So if you look at what's going on in the health system market broadly, every single health system is trying to create a relationship that either goes before the patient ever walks into their facility or extends beyond that encounter. I think that's going to be an increasing request from consumers is how does this attach to my sick care strategy versus purely a wellness strategy.
Mm-hmm. Paul, do we have Paul?
Yep.
I see Paul. Paul, do you have a reaction to that poll number?
Yeah,
Does 64% kind of surprise you, or do you think that's in line with your thinking?
No, it's entirely in line with the research that we've been doing continuously for the last 3 years. And in fact, that number has crept up in the last 18 months, primarily because of COVID and people.
We lost Paul. I'm going to flip that over to get Dan's opinion on that, and then we'll bring Paul back.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not surprised by that number at all. If anything, it may be a little. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. Then they'll be looking for reassurance that everything's okay when they can't be there. I mean, which is exactly what all of us have spoken about here earlier on.
Great. Let's go to, there is one question, I saw it down in the slides, about the marketing tactics. There we go. And Paul, given you're the resident CMO on the panel, messaging is such a big deal in this category. You look at what Apple has done with Apple Watch and really has educated an entire generation of people about the value of fall down detection. And Apple does. I mean, if Apple has one strength, messaging is one of their big strengths. In this category, what are the best marketing tactics to reach buyers? From a perspective, do you have any from a marketing angle? What are your thoughts on that topic? Because messaging is a big deal. Really good, compelling marketing messaging.
It is, and actually, I wonder at the whole kind of remote. We very much focused on simplicity of messaging for the older people and their families. We focused on saying to people, it's about 3 things. We'll tell you if your mom's okay. We'll tell you if something's gone wrong and she needs help right now. And we'll tell you if things are changing over time. And that simplicity seems to cut through to people. Certainly what I know is talking about the tech absolutely does not work. Only focusing on the benefits to the older person, their family, and what the care provider can do with the additional insight has been what's worked for us and what we see working for others in our markets.
Lainey, from a marketing messaging standpoint, even though you're not the CMO, but purely from a messaging standpoint, marketing messaging is a big deal. Alarm.com does have a great reputation for messaging its solutions. Any insight in terms of what you believe the best marketing tactics are to convince family members, caregivers to consider these type of solutions, and because we know that powerful marketing messaging does win in the marketplace. So, any thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, so I would say that what we've learned over the years is that ultimately the adult child is the influencer, if not the buyer of this type of system. So their awareness of smartphone and wearables, they've typically got a smartphone, they've got an Apple Watch on. They know that this can be done at a distance. And so they're looking to technology. But to your point, simplifying the value proposition, greater independence, peace of mind, connectedness, ability to live life at home, life on your own terms. Those are the kinds of messages that I think have resonated well. What I think has been interesting is sort of the concept of personal fitness and health and wellness as it relates to lifestyle with a more active aging, and how wearables and Apple Watch have changed that. So there is a piece of this that I think that will become more around the quantified self that is being proactive and preventative about aging, and knows that it's smart to have a connection to someone who cares. And what does that look like? So I think that we will ultimately, like I said, we focused a lot in the last year on mobility and moving beyond the confines of a property and personalizing the experience within alarm.com. There's different things that we're going to be rolling out that will then speak to how do you take care of the people who matter most in your life, not just the property. And so I think that also, to your point, I think that very nicely sort of dovetails into the commercial experience of what does employee wellness mean? And that's very much on people's mind. And what what can be done to make sure that we're also connecting and thinking of the care of the people that work with or for us? And what does that look like as a benefit?
Great. Can we go back to that second poll question? Can we pull that up for a second?
Mark, before we go there, can I
please.
make a quick comment?
Yes,
yeah.
please.
So what's interesting is that we're slowly taking this march around, call it smart home health, independent living. This concept of a set of technology in the home related to your health, a set of services that enable connectivity to a professional, whatever kind it is, wellness or sick care. It feels like we're doing a slow march towards a utility, much in the same way as we buy electricity or communications itself. I'm curious what the rest of the panel at some point thinks about when we make that pivot, because this feels like one of those things that is a commodity that every single patient or consumer will have at some point in the future. Pivot. These questions around type of device won't be immediately as important as the quality of the service.
Yeah, I think that's so important, Manisha. I mean, I think about that a lot is as consumers are walking around with medical grade devices on their arm as a wristwatch, and how does that continuity of care translate in the medical world? So how does that actually stay relevant and without having to mine a lot of data, but having that awareness? And then what's the response to that? What's the service model around that? I think it really does start to speak to the consumerization of healthcare and how do we tie these experiences together? Mm-hmm. We spend a lot of time thinking about that, and what does that mean as a business model? This isn't an end of life solution anymore. Where we started with PERS, where you fall, you break your hip, you either move or catastrophically it becomes tragic. Now it's like, how do we not only extend one's life at home, but how do we make sure that their quality of life is great and that their family and their professional caregivers are informed of the patterns of their life that could lead to decline or risk. I mean, I thought it was fascinating yesterday when Dr. Cook said that a sensor that would be really interesting and innovative to get proactive and preventative around is hydration. Mm-hmm. We were not thinking about hydration 10 years ago or air quality. We just weren't, So it is, to me, something that we spend a lot of time thinking through. And what does that mean to our partners as far as if you can extend one's life at home? To your point, Andy, when you're paying $20 to $30 an hour for care, 3-hour minimum with drive time, you're at $90 a day and you've got 21 hours of risk, or you're going to pay $4,000 for a nursing home per month. This is different. This is a different conversation. It does become a utility at that point. I mean, at that point, it feels like everyone benefits.
Yeah, there is a second poll question. We only have a few minutes left that I want to get to because this is a fascinating answer because our research would be almost counterintuitive. in that the question was, in our second polling question is, what is the biggest challenge that independent living facilities have in embracing connected health technologies? And 57% indicated cost. And our research, Parks research, indicates that at least at a family member caregiver level, cost is really not the big obstacle, at least with monitoring level services. That was fascinating. That's fascinating to me. We're only seeing 7% indicate on the poll that concerns about privacy. Now, interestingly, the poll indicates that 21% indicates that some independent facilities lack the technology expertise for implementation of these capabilities. So let me flip it back to Dan. Any reaction to that polling question?
Yeah, I think that the issue I have with that response to that polling question is when you think about senior living, there's different phases as we've talked of earlier. And I think, for instance, privacy is a much more important feature for people in assisted living facilities or senior facilities versus nursing home.
Mm-hmm.
I think that cost, when you think of cost, obviously the more care you need, the more expensive cost is. And frankly, you get to a stage where no technology is going to be able to replace having a 24/7 nurse or sit in a nursing home, and there's obviously a high cost associated with that. So I think when you look at cost, you got to look at it from the standpoint of the caregiver, their cost, and also when you look at privacy, the stage of life someone's at. I thought that Andy laid it out quite nicely. It's consistent with our model, by the way. When you look at our subscription cost and our per month cost, compare that to what it would be if you were in an assisted living facility, as an example, and there's no comparison. And I think to Lanny's point, for my judgment, I've been in healthcare my entire career. Consumers have been every year getting placed with a greater burden of taking care of themselves and taking care of their caregivers. And so I think the utility concept that Manish mentioned earlier, I think we're already there, candidly. It's just a matter of how it's best delivered. So I would have thought privacy would be higher than 7%, candidly, and cost wouldn't be
as high.
Be a little, low. Yeah, that one takes me back a little bit, but it could be the stage of life you're at. Maybe people look at. We don't. Our data would not indicate that. Our data would indicate privacy is a very, very important feature.
Any other perspectives on that polling question?
I think there's two key elements that are going to drive cost for care, and drive the desire to stay at home. Number one, I think COVID has served as a huge accelerant to the desire for people to stay at the place that they call home. We've seen the stories about moving into nursing homes, and people are terrified to do so. And I think that's serving and will continue to serve for quite some time, particularly as things start to kind of get a little bit out of control again with COVID now, that people want to stay home, and that's going to drive a desire to say, hey, I'm going to do everything I can to stay in place. The piece that also is going to be a big driver is there is a looming caregiver shortage in the country. It's going to be huge. The number of people that are going to need care versus the number of people that are going to provide care is going to impact the economics of that model significantly. And that's where we see an opportunity for technology to step in there, but also continuing on with a human side to it. It may be different than in-home care, but it may be a human voice on the other end of the phone or on the other end of a video chat, having a conversation with someone to check in with them as part of that kind of social interaction, which is so important. So I think those are some big items that are going to impact this discussion as we move forward. Certainly the impact of COVID and desire to stay at home, but also the caregiver shortage is a real thing. And we talk to our caregiver partners that we work with, and they're trying to figure out, like, how am I going to get care to these folks who need in-home care, because we have this looming shortage of caregivers.
That's an excellent point. Go ahead, Lainey. I'm sorry.
I was saying, Andy, it's interesting. I mean, that coupled with sort of the sandwich generation, what's interesting to see sort of, and this is not what I would say from, like, we would need Parks to look at this. This is just sort of what I see as trends is There's not families that can do this anymore. They don't have the time for alerts and notifications, and they don't have the bandwidth. So, if you can't hire in-home care and you as a family can't take this on, then there is a service needed that is a utility that can serve as a caregiving service. I mean, at some point you realize that, even in certain countries in our international markets that don't have the children, to support the aging adults, they too are facing this.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the 2 minutes we have left, and we literally just have a couple of minutes left, and we have Paul back, which is great. Any closing comments, Paul, from your perspective before we sign off? Anything you'd like to leave with the audience? And Paul, we don't have your mic. Paul's mic may not be working. Before we sign, let me give Dan a shot at that question. Dan,
I'm going to echo what I think I've heard from my fellow panelists today. I think peace of mind, security, and being able to provide a tool and a service for the caregiver is the end of the game here. And I think that has to happen. Andy made a good point about caregivers or losing caregivers are being outnumbered by those who need care. But I think having devices and technology and a digital platform that can offer peace of mind and can do it in an effective fashion and communicate with the caregiver is going to help in a long way to deal with these other issues we're facing. I think COVID brought to light.
Great. Paul, do we have Paul's audio? Paul, are you there?
I think you've given me back the mic now.
Yeah, please, go ahead.
For a moment. So look, I'd agree with that last statement. I think our focus is very much on, can we provide intelligence that will allow families and caregivers to make better informed care decisions on behalf of the people that they're looking after. And that is kind of forefront of our minds all the time, is that whatever we're providing, whatever information we're providing, whatever format it's in, from whatever device it comes from, will, at the end of the day, will you be able to make a better informed care decision if you know this?
Manesh, I'll give you the last word.
Well, there's no better time to be alive. I think the industry is finally breaking down some of the barriers, and all of our panelists are contributing to making home care that much more accessible and convenient for everyone. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks to all of you. This was a terrific panel. Appreciate your time and energy. And all of you are doing fantastic work in a category that is really making a difference in people's lives. So thanks for your time today. Thanks for sharing your perspective. We do have a virtual Zoom call. Make sure that you have that Zoom call link if you'd like to participate. That will start in a few minutes. And then that will be followed by the remainder of the presentations today. But thanks again, and we look forward to seeing you in the Zoom room. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks.
We have been studying the virtual care market for years, and we have this great new connected home study that gives a unique view, which are trending data on these major shifts in the market. This study provides trending data on consumer familiarity, use and demand for telehealth services and connected health services. It evaluates user experience with telehealth services and investigates consumer appetite for virtual care as a standard offering outside of crisis conditions. We have a second study publishing that focuses specifically on health and wellness solutions for seniors and their family caregivers and those who live in their home independently. This research quantifies the impact of the COVID-19 crisis on seniors and family caregivers, assessing concerns, pain points, and demand for technology products and services. We are offering all Connected Health Summit attendees a $500 credit if you purchase this study in September. Please reach out to our VP of Business Development, Jason Paris, if you have any questions about the connected health and independent living research, your independent living research needs. And we're always excited about future sponsorship opportunities for all Parks Associates events. So please email us or contact us via the above email information and contact information. And I want to give one last shout out for for our today's sponsors, Alarm.com, Essence, and Everise. And I also want to remind our audience of the enterprise wellness solutions offered by alarm.com. Feel free to reach out to them for additional information. As I mentioned before, up next is our networking discussion via Zoom at 1:15 p.m., which we're right on top of. We hope you join us at 2 p.m. Central Time for our afternoon session, Driving Innovation, New Investments, and the Future of Healthcare. Thanks for taking the time to join us today.